Hello everyone, LyktstolpeTV here again with another video. Since so many of you guys liked my other guides for Combat Rogue and Retribution Paladin, I decided to make another guide, and this time I'm making a guide for my first healer in this expansion, which will be the Resto Druid actually. I really like playing Resto Druid. They're really strong right now, and yeah, probably the strongest actually, in my honest opinion. So I'm just gonna do like a standard type of guide like I've done with my others. Just go through like the talents and glyphs and rotations, macros, stat priority, all that good stuff. Just cover as much as I can so you guys can see what I think of the class and how I play it. So yeah, I hope you will enjoy. Right, so let's start with talents and glyphs as usual. Now, as in my other guides that I've made, I literally just go through all of them because when I try out a new class, I tend to just try out all the different talents and then just reevaluate from there to see which ones are best for which situation. So I'm just gonna go through all of them like I did in my other guides pretty much. Starting with tier 1, the feline swiftness is a passive talent which will increase your movement speed by 15%. It's pretty straightforward talent. However, for PvP purposes, which is the guide I'm making this for, it's not really a good thing to use, like, at all. You should completely disregard this talent in every single situation when it comes to PvP. Literally, that's all I have to say for this talent pretty much. Moving on to Displacer Beast, however, is a far better talent to use for PvP purposes. What it does is an instant cost, it has 30 seconds cooldown, and it teleports the druid up to 20 yards forward, activates cat form, and increases the movement speed by 50% for 4 seconds. Literally this works as a mage blink, only it's a little bit longer cooldown than a mage blink of course, but we do get a speed increase at the end of it as well, which is really, really good, because you can get away from those melee cleaves. You blink around a corner, get away, heal up to full, start going at it again. It's a really, really, really great talent, and most of the time this will be the one you pick, in my honest opinion. Wild Charge, however, should not be left out completely. It's still pretty good talent. It's also an instant one. It's like half the cooldown Displacer Beast has. However, what Wild Charge does, it has different effects depending on which shapeshift form you're in. So if you're in my normal form, like you are now, or like I am now, sorry, you can fly to an ally's position, kind of like Shadow Step for rogues. And if you're in bear form, you charge an enemy target, you immobilize them for 4 seconds. In cat form, you can leap behind an enemy and daze them for 3 seconds. And travel form kind of has the same function as Displacer Beast. You leap 20 yards forward. However, the reason why I'm still picking Displacer Beast though is because the cat form is automatically activated when I press Displacer Beast. If you have a look here, see, it automatically activates cat form and you get that nice speed bonus at the end. It does have the double CD that what Wild Charge would have, but the thing is, for Wild Charge to be good, I have to go into travel form first and then activate Wild Charge. So it's an extra global cooldown at first as well, which you're gonna probably want to use on something else. And there's no speed increase at the end of the leap either. So this is why I'm mainly sticking with Displacer Beast. Sometimes I play with Wild Charge as well. It's very, very rare though, because I really like Displacer Beast. It's just by far the best one in my opinion. Moving on to tier 2, we have Ysera's Gift. This is also a really nice talent for Resto Druids as well. What it does is that it heals you for 4% of your maximum health every 5 seconds. If you are at full health, a random nearby injured ally will be healed instead. So it has a pretty good list of cons to it, because whatever you do, it's gonna heal someone or something automatically, and as a healer that's pretty good. And if you're getting trained by a melee cleave, that's also a really good healing over time on you. It can't be dispelled because it's a passive, it's always there to tick on you. And if you need extra healing on your allies and you're not being focused, the heal is still landing on someone else. So yeah, doesn't cost any mana, no cooldown, no nothing. It's just a really great talent overall in my opinion. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Moving on to Renewal. Renewal is an instant cost talent. It has a 2-minute cooldown, and what it does is it instantly heals the druid. Note that you can only use this on yourself. It instantly heals the druid for 22% of maximum health, usable in all shapeshift forms. Personally, in my honest opinion, this talent should not be used like almost never, ever, in my honest opinion. At least not for a healer druid. The cooldown is too long, the heal is not worth the cooldown. The only plus side is it's usable in every single form, I suppose. That's pretty much the only plus side that I can see to this talent, but I really would not recommend to use this over Ysera's Gift, for instance. I really would not. Yeah, moving on to Cenarion Ward. This one, however, is definitely something that you could use if you'd like to. What it does is it protects a friendly target for 30 seconds. It's quite a long duration actually. Any damage taken will consume the ward and heal the target for 46,626 health over 6 seconds. So it's basically another healing over time when it procs. And you can put this up in anticipation for incoming damage as well, because it lasts so long. 30 seconds is a long time. The cooldown is also 30 seconds. Like if you can put this up way ahead of time, you can get almost 2 of them out really quickly, and it's going to be like a big extra healing over time wise. The only downside with this is that it's purgeable and dispellable and spell stealable like every other hot. So that's just one more thing for the enemy to steal or take away from you instantly, pretty much. And that's why I like Ysera's Gift a lot more, because they can't steal or dispel it. It's always there when you need it, pretty much. Moving on to tier 3, we have Fairy Swarm. Prevents the target from activating stealth or invisibility and reduces the movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. It deals 462 damage when cast from bear form, usable in all shapeshift forms, but occurs a 6-second cooldown while in bear form or cat form. This is a really interesting talent. It's definitely viable for healers. I personally use it against every stealth team that we face in arenas. Like if there's a rogue, mage, hunter, you know, whatever, I usually spec into this and just put them on all the stealthers in the team, especially rogues, because the denial of re-stealthing and resetting is quite powerful, unless you have a hunter or something with you that can take care of that for you. But yeah, most like just against stealther teams in general, I usually pick this talent. It's really good, and it also slows as well. So if you want to kite someone, you can just blink, apply that, and get around the corner. You know, they'll probably give up the chase at that point. So yeah, it's a pretty good talent. I like it, and the cooldown is really short. But usually I activate it from caster form anyway, so it doesn't have a cooldown there. But lately I've been starting to use Mass Entanglement a lot more, and the reason for this is that, yeah, it's just a really great talent as well overall. Like especially versus melee cleaves, when you're getting trained a lot and you need to get away. Let's say like when I mostly play with a hunter, obviously, because the synergy between hunter and Resto Druid right now is quite ridiculous. When my healer No, sorry, not my healer, sorry. When my hunter traps the enemy healer and he doesn't have a cooldown, I can apply this insta AoE route on every single melee training me or an ally, and they can just peel off and get away. It's an 8-second duration snare in PvP, just like entangling roots. The only difference is that this one is insta, and it roots everyone in around the target that you're trying to snare. So the only reason why it's so good is because it's insta, pretty much, because you don't have to fake anything, you can just apply it and get the hell out. It has a 30-second cooldown though, but it's still pretty good because you can still roll around with entangling roots in between the cooldown of this if you need to, but yeah, just make sure you don't get interrupted. That's pretty much it. It's a really good talent overall, especially versus melee cleaves. Moving on to Typhoon. I used to use this a lot as well. I still do, mostly in PGs though, and other stuff where you, places where you can knock people. It's quite fun, you know. You get that knock off people off edges, and you can knock people down in arenas as well to line of sight the healer from target and stuff like that. But since I'm playing with a healer, this knock is on DR most of the time with explosive trap. So I decided to try out something new, and I ended up with Mass Entanglement and Fairy Swarm most of the time. But this talent is still really good if you're not playing with a class that already has a knockback. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents anyway. Moving on to the 4th tier, here we have a talent that I've been experimenting a lot with, and I think it has a lot of potential. The only downside is it's on the same tier as Tree of Life, but I'll get to that later. Let me just explain to you what this does. What this does is when you cast Swiftmend, which is like our primary insta heal, pretty much, like except for Nature Swiftness of course, but it's like a really nice dump heal. It's an insta cast, and yeah, I'll get to that later as well. Anyway, when you cast Swiftmend, you gain Soul of the Forest. Now what Soul of the Forest does is that it reduces the cast time of your next healing touch by 50%. This is quite irrelevant. You don't really use healing touch that often as Resto Druid, or so I've noticed in my type of play anyway. But yeah, or increases the healing of your next regrowth or rejuvenation by 100%. Or increases the healing of your next wall growth by 50%. Now, the part of this passive that makes it so good is the 100% extra healing on your regrowth. Because right now, what the 4 set on the Druid PvP gear does, it increases the bonus healing of Nature Swiftness by 100%. And with the Glyph I'm using, Glyph of Regrowth, I gain a 40% chance to critical strike with Regrowth. So I pretty much crit every single time. So I crit Regrowth, you have 100% extra healing from it with Nature Swiftness, and you get an additional 100% healing from Soul of the Forest after you Swiftmend. So this means you can basically get a 200% healed Regrowth crit. Almost every time crit anyway, because of the Glyph out. And basically it heals, I can just spec and show you really. Let's just get this up, and then Swiftmend, and then NS heal. You see it's 111,237 heal. That's quite a lot of healing in one spell. Note that that heal only works with Nature Swiftness because you get 100% increased effect from Nature Swiftness, but as I said, I have the Glyph of Regrowth and it crits quite often. Let's get a normal one off to just show it off. Yeah, there's 55,618. So yeah, it's a lot of healing, man. It really is a lot of healing, and I think it's definitely viable in a lot of situations. But most people will go for Tree of Life, and yeah, we all know what the Tree of Life, aka Broccoli Forum, does. Basically, what it does is you shapeshift into a Tree of Life like this. This is the big broccoli, and it increases your healing done by 15%, increases armor by 120%, you are immune to polymorph, and functionality of rejuvenation, wall growth, regrowth, and tangling roots are enhanced. You may freely shapeshift in and out of this form for 30 seconds. That's a long time, 30 seconds, at which point the shapeshift expires. Now what regrowth gets of Tree of Life is that in an insta-cast, you can run around and spam this bad boy as much as you want. There will be no cast time. And what rejuvenation will receive from Tree of Life is healing is increased by 50% and mana cost is reduced by 30%. Entangling Roots also becomes insta in Tree of Life, so that's another thing that you can boost your crowd control with. We'll combine that with Mass Entanglement if that is on cooldown. If you're in Tree of Life, you can also cast that one insta. And last but not least, when you're in Tree of Life and you wild the growth, it affects 2 additional targets. However, this is not all that relevant to PvP, considering you really don't have more than 5 people with you, like in arenas and such. I guess this effect can be good in RBGs when there's more than 5 people with you, I suppose, or normal BGs too. But yeah, it's just a really great talent. 3 minutes, and basically you can just top an entire team with this. Like the insta regrowth and the almost guaranteed crit on every regrowth is just really, really strong. So yeah, it's almost a no-brainer, but I do want to stress Soul of the Forest is still viable if you can learn to play with it. But versus melee Glyphs, I usually go Tree of Life because it's annoying to not be able to fake the interrupts and stuff, and you just end up dying anyway. The Tree of Life kind of helps you with that a little bit. Force of Nature summons a tree ant which will immediately cast Swift Mend on your current target. The tree ant will cast Healing Touch on that target or a nearby ally periodically, healing for 10,430 in less 15 seconds, maximum 3 charges. This is also a pretty decent talent. Yeah, since it's on the same tier as Tree of Life, sorry, I can't speak. This is mostly why I haven't tried this out a whole lot. It's a decent extra healing, but overall I don't really think this talent is worth it over Tree of Life or Soul of Forest really, so that's why I'm just not going to talk about it too much. But yeah, I might do some more testing on this later. You never know. Moving on to tier 3, tier 5 is it? Yeah, can't count either, Jesus. Invokes the spirit of Ursol to roar, incapacitating all enemies within 10 yards for 3 seconds. Any damage caused will remove this effect, usable in all shapes and forms. Right, basically this tier is all about crowd control. And what this does is, as I just said, it incapacitates all targets within 10 yards for 3 seconds. This is a great tool if you want to get that Cyclone off without any worries of being interrupted or CC'd yourself. If they're all clumped up and you roar everyone, there's no chance of you getting interrupted when you're casting Clone, Root, Heal, all that good stuff. It's only on a 30-second cooldown as well, which is pretty short. I do like this ability, but right now I'm playing with Mighty Bash. I'll get to that in a bit. Next on the tier is Ursol's Vortex. Conjures a vortex of wind for 10 seconds at the destination location that reduces movement speed of all enemies within 8 yards for 50%. The first time an enemy attempts to leave the vortex, the wind will pull that enemy back to its center, all usable in all shapeshift forms. This is also a pretty decent talent. I wouldn't recommend it for Resto though, considering yeah, the cooldown is, for starters, is really long. It's the longest cooldown of the CC spells on this tier. And also, yeah, most of the time people have like more than one gap closer anyway, so in my honest opinion I don't use this very much. I haven't tested it that a lot either. I have done it a few times, but most of the time I will go for Mighty Bash because it's the 100% for sure deal when you want to CC. It's a stun, so it can't be accidentally broken. It stuns for 5 seconds, which is quite a long time. It's usable in all shapeshift forms, just like every other stuff, and it's on a 50-second cooldown, which is also shorter than Ursol's Vortex, but longer than Incapacitating Roar. However, Incapacitating Roar brings a lot of risk when it cannot be accidentally broken, rendering it pretty much useless. So yeah, moving on to the next tier, we have Heart of the Wild. When activated, increases all healing done by 35% and dramatically improves the druid's ability to tank, deal melee damage and cast spells. This is, and used to be, like by far the best talent you could ever get. It's an insta-cast. However, it's on a 6-minute cooldown. It's the longest cooldown that is allowed to be used in arenas as far as I know. But yeah, basically because of the long cooldown I have been swapping out of this a few times to try other things, but most of the time this is the best one to get because you get so much extra healing from it. You can even do damage both as a caster and a cat form while this is up. I have had Ferocious Bite crits for 40-50k as a healer, and the Wrath spam usually hits for like 25k, crits for up to 40 there as well. It's just a whole bunch of extra damage. Like I guess I could show you that as well actually. Let me just pop it here and let's see how much the Wrath does. 27k non-crit. This is on a dummy, so you'd have to take into account it'll do a little bit less damage on a PvP player, but still 28k, 27k, still a lot. Can also try cat form before the effect runs out actually. Just get some combo points. You can see how much the Ferocious Bite hits for. It's quite a lot as well. Let's see if I get lucky with a crit. Probably not. 25k non-crit, so you can pretty much count on like a 40k crit pretty much. which is quite a lot of backup damage, like multi-strike procs as well counted. It's, yeah, just really great off healing and, no sorry, off damage, and the healing also gets increased by quite a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much a no-brainer. It basically makes you kick ass, do a whole bunch of healing damage and supporting overall. Dream of Scenarios is something I haven't really tried. I don't think it's viable at all for healing at this point, at least not in an arena environment. When you're actually free to cast something, it usually has to be a heal, so I would disregard this talent completely for Resto. Nature's Vigil is a talent I have been trying out a lot more though, mainly because the cooldown is so short compared to Heart of the Wild. Basically what it does is, while active, all single target healing spells also damage a nearby enemy target for 30% of the healing done, so you can actually help DPS this way, and on all single target healing and damage spells also heal a nearby friendly target based on the amount done. 30% for heals, 40% for damage. So basically it's a back and forth damage and healing ability. It's really great for the healing part. You basically get like another healing over time on your entire team. If you have hots up on everyone, it's really great overall, and the cooldown is really short. You also can do some backup damage with it. It's pretty nifty in my opinion, mostly because the cooldown is so short compared to Heart of the Wild. I use it in 3v3 sometimes. Yeah, overall it's pretty good talent in my opinion. Moving on to the last tier, we have Moment of Clarity. This is pretty much a PvE talent in my opinion. Like, usually you don't really have that much mana problems in any PvP situation as a druid right now, depending on how you itemize of course, but mostly this should just be used as a PvE talent in my opinion. The talent I'm using as a last talent is Germination. You can apply 2 rejuvenations to the same target, and the rejuvenation's duration is also increased by 3 seconds. So basically what this does is it makes rejuvenation last for 18 seconds instead of 15, and if you apply it, you get another one which heals for the same amount. So you get 2 rejuvenations, which is really nice. Pretty much, yeah, a no-brainer for me, really. But yeah, on the talent I have been considering though, considering I was talking about Soul of the Forest earlier, this would be the ideal talent for that passive in my honest opinion. Basically I can show you pretty much, like showing does more than explaining some time. Basically what Rampant Growth does, it's a passive and it makes Swiftman now consumes your own regrowth or rejuvenation healing over time, but it has no cooldown. Basically, since it's applied to both regrowth and rejuvenation, it's actually quite viable. If they would change this to only regrowth, so rejuvenation would stay up 100%, it would be really great. I'd probably try and swap it out 100%, but for this to work you have to glyph out of regrowth, losing all that juicy crit in my honest opinion to make it worth anyway. Let's see what glyph we could get. Glyph of Cyclone for the extra CC. So basically now that I glyphed out of it, I'm gonna get the regrowth healing over time back. A lot less crit though, but look at this. There will be no cooldown on Swiftman whatsoever. This time it consumed my regrowth instead, making rejuvenation stick on me, so that's quite good. Let's try that again. There you go, it consumed my regrowth hot instead of rejuvenation, and there's a really nice crit. 72,304. That was a multi-strike proc as well, granted, but it's quite a lot of healing in my honest opinion. So basically for this to work you'd have to cast regrowth and get that hot up every time though. You could do it like this as well. You just apply rejuvenation and then Swiftmend and then reapply it instantly to not fall behind as much on healing, but yeah, it's, I don't know, like, yeah, 111,000 again. It's just, this would be the ideal thing to go for instead of Tree of Life in my honest opinion. And if they would remove the rejuvenation part of this talent, I would probably go for it a lot more, because the regrowth healing over time, barely heals for anything anyway, whereas regrowth heals for a lot more. Regrowth heals for 3,458 per 2.74 seconds, but regrowth only heals for 582, so it's a lot better if it consumes that one instead of reju. So yeah, it's pretty good talent in my opinion. However, most of the time I feel most comfortable with going Tree of Life and Germination and with the regrowth glyph. So yeah, but I might do some more testing on the Solo Forest and Rampant Growth, maybe do a separate video on that if you guys want to. I'm completely fine with that. I'm really interested to see how viable it is and if it gets changed in the future. But yeah, that's pretty much it for talents, I suppose. Let's move on to the next thing. Alright, moving on to the next thing, which will be Glyphs. I've already been mentioning the Glyphs a little bit in combination with the talents, but I wanted to separate them anyway though, to really clarify how I feel about Glyphs at the moment, because there's a lot of viable Glyphs for Resto Druids at the moment, in my honest opinion, but the ones I run with at the moment that are pretty baseline for me in my current playstyle is Glyph of Regrowth. Basically what it does, it increases the critical strike chance of regrowth by 40%. That's quite a lot. Basically it makes almost every single regrowth crit. It's quite a decent amount of healing in my opinion, and when it procs on a multi-strike you get even more, of course. So yeah, that's what I'm basically running with as baseline for now. My second glyph is Glyph of the Shape Mender. Each time you activate a shapeshift form, you are healed for 5% of your maximum health. This one goes really well with Ysera's Gift, the talent I was talking about earlier, which also heals you for, let's see, so I'm not mistaken, yeah, it's only 4% of your maximum health every 5 seconds, but it's still a lot. Combine this with this glyph, you get 9% maximum health every 5 seconds, pretty much. So it's quite a lot of extra healing on yourself if you're in trouble. The next glyph I have, which is most of the time pretty baseline, is Glyph of Bark Skin. It reduces the chance that you'll be critically hit by 25% while in Bark Skin is active. And yeah, this pretty much makes you immune to crit, because most people don't have above 25% crit chance as of now. I don't think, maybe rogues, ferals and those type of classes have, maybe, but most classes should be like at top around 25%, so you're pretty much crit immune with this glyph, which is pretty strong, in addition to that 20% damage reduction which Barkskin provides. It's only on a 1 minute cooldown as well. It's really great to have. I'll just go over the minor glyphs really quickly as well. Glyph of the Sprouting Mushroom. The wild mushroom spell can now be placed on the ground instead of underneath a target. This is a really handy glyph as well for arenas, because now you can put the shroom out like this, just wherever you want. You don't have to have a player to target to get it out. So you can position it smartly in arenas for your 3v3 or 5v5 team. There's quite a lot of extra healing from Efflorescence. Let's see how much it heals for. It heals for, yeah, quite a lot actually. It's like, considering it's an insta-cast and it can't be the spell or anything, it's quite a lot of decent extra healing, like if you combine it with my hots. So yeah, I like to use this minor glyph just because of the placement of the shrooms. I'm using this one as now for shits and giggles and nostalgia. Basically it brings back the old tree ant form, sorry, that were available in BC and Wrath of the Lich King. Sometimes just for shits and giggles. I don't really use it while in proper combat or PvP environment, but just for, you know, for the lulz. And last but not least, Glyph of Grace. You take reduced damage from falling even while not in cat form. This is quite a decent glyph to have in BGs and some arenas as well, where you would take a little bit more damage from falling, but with this glyph you pretty much won't take any damage at all from falling, at least not from any edges in arenas, which is pretty good guarantee to have, considering it's a minor glyph. But yeah, moving on to the major glyphs again, like I said, these three are my baseline ones, but it's not the only ones I'm using. For instance, a glyph I usually use instead of Barkskin, if I feel confident enough, is the glyph which is exclusive with it, and it's called Glyph of Enchanted Bark. This glyph is actually quite useful against hunters mainly, but also other classes that has long interrupts. Basically what it provides is an aura mastery pretty much on your Barkskin. You are immune to silence and interrupt effects for 5 seconds after activating Barkskin. This is really great versus Shadow Priest, Hunter, Mage, Warlock, all those type of classes who has long and annoying interrupts when you really need to dish out that heal or CC so you don't get interrupted. Yeah, I mainly use it against God Comp, Spell Cleaves and Hunters, pretty much, to sum it up more or less. It's pretty good Glyph to have versus that, but most of the time I use this one to become crit immune. Moving on to Stampeding Roar is a glyph I use sometime to break roots when I don't have time to dispel myself or an ally of mine from roots and stuff, because it's not on the global cooldown, so it's quite nice root breaker if you need to get out of that quickly but don't have time to use Dispel, and Dispel only hits one target, so it's quite good to free your entire party from roots and stuff when you use this. But most of the time I really don't use this, but sometimes I do. Thought it would be worth mentioning. Other than that, we have Glyph of Cyclone. This is a glyph I use a lot as well. I usually swap it out with Glyph of the Shape Mender because it's the only one that I can really have as an alternative one, because these two and the other one, Enchanted Bark, are exclusive to each other. Like, those three are the ones I keep on like all the time, but this is the one I can swap out for Cyclone if I really need to get that for sure Cyclone off. It increases the range of Cyclone, and with the range nerf on Cyclone it can be really handy sometimes. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for glyphs. I haven't tested these other glyphs yet, but I don't think they're all that viable for PvP purposes anyway. Maybe Nature's Cure could be, but yeah, I haven't tested it yet, but maybe. I'll get back to you on that one if I decide to test them. I think that's enough for the glyph part. Let's move on, shall we? Alright, so let's move on to stat priority and enchants and gems and all that good stuff. So, for Resto Druid, obviously intellect is going to be your best stat, but it's not a secondary, but I'm just going to mention it anyway. Basically, you're going to go intellect, mastery, haste, multi-strike, versatility, and then crit. In my build. Note this is only from my build. The reason for mastery being the first primary secondary stat is because it basically your direct healing is increased by an additional 20%, and casting your direct healing spells grants you an additional 20% bonus to periodic healing. Basically it boosts all of your healing by a shit ton. It's really nice. It's a no-brainer in my opinion. It's just too good to pass up. So mastery will be your best stat. Second, we have haste. Basically what haste does is, well, what haste does for most classes, it increases attack speed, spell casting, and energy regeneration. It also increases the tick time for healing over time. All my healing over times tick faster with haste, which is quite nice to have. Overall, really, I think. So that's why I'm putting that second. The reason why crit is so low in the stat Prio is because I have the 40% crit chance of regrowth, which is mostly my major healing spell anyway, so I'm putting crit pretty low, mostly because of that. So that's why I mentioned in my current build, I put crit that low. And next is multi-strike. You know, like, multi-strike is also kind of a no-brainer. It gives an extra heal. It's a short percentage in my case, but sometimes I run with classes that have 5% extra multi-strike. I get 16%. 16% is quite a lot, and if you get that really nice multi-strike on the NS regrowth, for instance, it's quite a lot of extra healing. So combine that with the mastery, it gets quite kick-ass. So that's why I put multi-strike in third. Versatility also increases damage and healing done, just flat extra damage and healing. It's great for survival as well because it decreases damage taken as well. Not with as big of amount as the other multiplier, but still pretty good in my opinion. Arguably, You could go for versatility more than multi-strike if you'd want to. I think I'd put multi-strike and versatility pretty much on par at this point. So yeah, whatever you prefer, really. If you have more access to versatility gear, I guess you could try it out. I'm gonna try it out definitely when I get the reputation I need for the versatility pieces to see how that works out for me. And yeah, I already explained why crit is the lowest prio for me, mostly because of the regrowth glyph and all that. So I'm not gonna get much more into that. Moving on to enchants. Yeah, pretty much. Since what I mentioned earlier, mastery is your best stat, so you just put mastery everywhere. Mastery on neck, mastery on cloak, mastery on rings. It's pretty much a no-brainer. Now, getting to the weapon though. The reason why I don't have the mastery enchant on weapon right now, the Bleeding Hollow one, is because I did some testing with it, and it doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't proc nearly as often as Mark of the Warsong, the haste one. And I think that's because Blizzard for some reason intended the mastery one to be intended for DPS mainly, because the tooltip says actually that blah 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 when you cast damage and deal damage with melee attacks or whatever, something like that. I think it had the melee attacks definition in the tooltip, so that's why it doesn't proc as much. So I tried it with just healing out of combat, and it pretty much didn't proc at all. Then I went into melee and started meleeing like this, and it procced a few times. But I noticed it proccing a lot more when I was in combat and healing. I did see it proc, but not nearly as often as Mark of Warsong does. And what Mark of Warsong does, it gives 1000 haste on the full proc. And yeah, 1000 haste makes your healing over time tick quite a lot faster. Slowly decays over time, but it can be reapplied before the duration has even ended, so it's a lot of extra haste added pretty much all the time. So for now, until they change Bleeding Hollow, the mastery enchant, I'm gonna run with the haste one. But if there's any update on the mastery enchant, I will let you guys know. And if there is, obviously you should always go for that enchant as well, because 500 mastery is, yeah, quite a lot. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this part as well. Oh yeah, of course, if you actually run by any sockets on PvP gear, I haven't yet. I don't think that we will anytime soon either, but if there's a socket, you should also go mastery, of course. Just thought I'd mention that. Yeah, I think that's it for that part as well. Let's move on to rotations, shall we? Right, so let's get on with rotation. I guess unlike a caster or DPS class in general, like apart from that, I guess there's not really any set rotation as a healer. Like you kind of just improvise and go along with the situation. But I guess I'll go over like the small, short baseline kind of rotation thingy I keep most of the time for my Resto Druid. Pretty much if my party is in no trouble whatsoever in both arenas and RPGs, basically what I try to do is just preemptively hot everyone like this, and the target I anticipate people to go on is the one that get Life Bloom, because Life Bloom is only available for one target. So you really want to make sure Life Bloom is on your primary healing target, and if you do have time between refreshing the normal hots, the 2 rejuvenations, you could get a wild growth off. However, I don't recommend it all that much in PvP because it does cost a lot of mana and it's a big risk of you getting interrupted either way. So I would suggest mostly casting regrowth if you have time to cast. So yeah, outside of that, depending on if, like for instance in 3v3, if I know my teammates are going to stay stationary in a certain position for a long period of time, you can put up efflorescence around them as well for that extra healing. It's really, really nice to have, and they can just juggle around that and just stay in it from time to time. So yeah, that's pretty good extra healing when you need it. Basically, if your team is in a lot of trouble, and if you're on Heart of the Wild, I just put Tree Form and Heart of the Wild in a combined macro. And basically what I do when my team is in trouble, I just click the panic button pretty much, the broccoli form, and just spam regrowth until everyone's topped. If you do have time to cast, reapply rejuvenation as the healing is increased by 50% while in tree form, but only if your party is in like no trouble whatsoever. Otherwise I would just recommend keep spamming regrowth, because it has like pretty much guaranteed crit chance because of the glyph, so it's really nice to top people off with it, and you basically can't get interrupted because it's insta-cast. The only thing that'll stop you is a stun, pretty much. If you're out of Heart of the Wild and tree form, what I usually do is I get behind a pillar and make sure that no one is on me. If I'm using Enchanted Bark, you can apply this before you do cast Tranquility. Tranquility is a really underrated healing spell in my opinion. It does heal for quite a lot, especially if your allies are hotted as well. But if you really want to dish out that really big extra healing, and if you do have time for it, just make sure you run into line of sight, you pop Bark Skin, and you can just heal people like this. And the people who are not in your line of sight will still be healed as long as they're inside the radius, so that's really nice as well. So you can line of sight and get that huge healing out if you really want to. Outside of that, like I mentioned, I rarely ever use Wild Growth, but it's pretty good extra healing. If you think you can afford it mana wise, why not throw it out there if you have time for it. But most of the time I will prioritize regrowth. And of course every single cooldown, try to get Swiftman in there as well. It's a lot of extra healing, it's insta, you know, there's no reason not to use it. It barely costs any mana. Just every single cooldown, just get Swiftman out there to really top off your team. Outside of that, I guess I could go through some CC rotation as well. Like, just go over like the baseline. How Cyclone works. Oh wait, never mind. That target was immune for some reason. I guess it's because the Raider one. I'll try this one. Let's see. No, it's immune as well. Oh well, I'll just explain it to you instead then. Basically what I usually do is I have very precise timers on my CC, and basically what you can do with Cyclone, it tosses the enemy up in the air, just orienting them but making them immune, invulnerable for up to 6 seconds. You can do this cast 3 times, and basically with diminishing return that means you can get 6 seconds plus 3 seconds plus 1.5 seconds. So that's 10.5 seconds CC on a target. You do have to get all 3 casts off successfully and at the right time for this to be working. But combine this with a Mighty Bash, which is another 5-second CC. You can basically CC someone by yourself for up to 15.5 seconds. It's quite a long time, but it also requires a lot of attention from you, and you won't be able to heal as much during this time, so you really gotta make sure your team is fine before you do this, or you will fall a lot behind, and yeah, falling behind on healing is not too much fun. But yeah, I usually do those CC rotations like when my hunter has full DR on his traps, because Cyclone and Trap does not share DR, which is one of the things that makes that combo so powerful. But yeah, other than that, just if you need pills from the melee cleaves, you just bam, just put up and mass entanglement, just slow everyone. It was immune there, but as you can see, it said 2 hits, so these 2 targets would have been snared if it would have worked, and then you can just blink the other way, get away safely, and just start healing again. So really a lot of utility, a lot of mobility, and a lot of strong heals in this class, and great CC. So that's pretty much a really good summarization of why I love Resto Druid so much. I think I'm gonna leave it at that, so I don't get too carried away with the rotations and stuff. Oh, and also, of course, you can throw in Iron Bark in there as well. If your target is in deep trouble, you can also put a short shield wall on your target. So yeah, but I think that's pretty much it. I'll just leave it at that. If you guys have any more questions or anything else you want me to cover, just let me know in the comments, and I can definitely do that, no problem. And last but not least, my macros that I use right now for my druid. Pretty straightforward macros, not nearly as complicated as my DPS macros, but I do still have a few to mostly help me with CC. Most of my macros are just for CC purposes, except for the Tree of Life. Oh, actually, I don't have the Heart of the Wild in here. Heart of the Wild, there you go. So this is like basically my panic button. It activates Tree of Life, Heart of the Wild, and Berserking at the same time to get all that good stuff stats. 15% haste from Berserking, 35% extra healing from Heart of the Wild, 15% extra healing additionally from Tree of Life, and then all that spammable good stuff. So that's like my panic button, sort of like Paladin bubble, to just dish out all that extra healing. Oh, sorry, I don't know why I cancelled the macro frame. Next up we have the traditional slash focus macro. This is what I'm using for a healer right now. Usually I have the arena 1, 2, 3, but I really don't feel I need it as of now. I might actually get it on my healer as well at some point, but right now I'm used to this type of play, so I'm using the manual focus one just to swap between like this. Focus that one, focus that one, focus that one. It's just pretty simple focus macro. And the focus cyclone macro works pretty much the same as my other shift modifier macro. Put this guy on focus, for instance, and I have this guy targeted. If I press shift, he's gonna try and cast cyclone on that target. If I don't press shift and just press R, which is my bind normally, it's gonna clone this target instead. Same thing with the bash. If I hold shift and then press 4, it's gonna bash this target, but if I hold it normally, it's gonna bash this target. Pretty straightforward shift modifier macros, which I use for my CC. I don't have one for entangling roots at this time because most of the time I have mass entanglement anyway, and entangling roots gets insta in tree form, and that's usually when I use those for CC anyway. But you could easily make another one with focus cast on entangling roots, the same one as bash and cyclone, without a doubt. Another short macro I have as well with my HP trinket that I use right now since I got the Warforged one is quite a lot of extra survival versus those melee cleaves, which I face a lot these days. I also have this trinket, of course, to gain the 505 intellect proc, but basically what this macro does is it shows the cooldown of the trinket, and I put health stone in there as well when I play with warlocks, so I activate the health stone and HP trinket at the same time. My other macros aren't really relevant to healing. I have the same one-shot macro for my boomkin and some other stuff that's not really relevant to healing. So I guess that's pretty much it for macros right now. Yeah, if you have any other questions or suggestions for macros that I can use for my Resto Druid, please let me know in the comments below. And that's it, guys, for this guide. Thank you so much for tuning in to my Resto Druid PvP guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's been informative and as detailed as possible. I know the clip is a little bit long, just like the other ones. I've been planning, or considering rather, to cut them out in shorter clips. If you guys would rather want me to do that, to just divide every section up into a separate clip, that works for me as well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and also if you like the clip as it is, or if you want me to split them up, please share this to your friends and anyone else you want to share it to. It really helps me out a lot and motivates me to keep going. I really like YouTubing. It's probably the greatest thing I've ever picked up in my life. I really enjoy it, and I want this to become a permanent thing. I also stream occasionally. You can check out the description below for the links, and yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. This has been LyktstolpeTV, and I'm out. Thanks and peace.